everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Girl Thursdays. Today I am here with Karmen and we are going to be talking about her experiences in the tech field. Thank you so much, Karmen, for joining me on this Zoom call. It means a lot. Could you give a short intro about yourself and your background, interests, and hobbies?
So I am a senior at Northeastern University, and I'll be starting my last semester there this spring. And so I've interned at different companies as a software engineer intern. I've worked on the front end, back end, and full stack. And then for hobbies, I'm interested in road cycling, and I'm also involved with a local chapter of Girls Who Code and also another chapter of Tech Girls.
How did you first get into the tech field?
So it actually started in college. In high school, I didn't have any programming experience before, but I had a cousin who suggested that I try computer science as a minor. So in my first semester, I actually started as a biology major, but I was taking an intro level programming course and then another intro level computer science course called discrete structures. And then after that first semester, I made the switch to computer science, and I've it's been like around uh, 3 or so years since then. So I've just been taking computer courses and then trying to get involved in through extracurriculars and through internship experiences as well.
I've heard a lot of people like start from like some completely different field, like you start from biology and then other people like from, I don't know, law or just like other fields, and then they discover computer science and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I think like computer science is very interdisciplinary, and you can like connect with it through different majors, and then also you can find different resources to get involved in different parts within the discipline as well, like web development or data science.
So you're interested in web development. Like what specifically led you to be interested in web development?
I think specifically it's like um, I'm involved in the student run consultancy, which basically we pair students and we build different web applications or other software applications for research groups around campus. And that's where I learned about React and like building user interfaces. And I think I enjoy like picturing users interacting with the stuff that I program. And it's just like most of the work that I've done through internships has been building user interfaces, and that's kind of how I got into it.
I guess for people who might not know who are watching, like what type of work do you do with web development? Like what exactly is web development?
I think web development could be front end, which is just like when you visit a website, it's the interface that you're interacting with, like the page that you're interacting with, the buttons or how it's laid out. Um, so that's the front end, and then the back end is just kind of like data structures or how information is kept and how it's organized and how might interact with the database or something like that in the back end.
What types of tools and languages do you usually work with when
Mostly
doing web
I've been
development?
working with JavaScript or Java or Python. So there are different web frameworks. I took this there's even like there's other frameworks that are less popular, like maybe like the Phoenix framework with the Elixir programming language, and that so I guess the language is paired with the framework, and for that pairing I used it in a web development course that I took it through school. But for most of what I've been doing at my internships, it's been JavaScript on the front end with React. So React is kind of like a framework, and then the language would be um, JavaScript. And then on the back end, you could have different servers or servlets. You could have a Java servlet or like a Node.js as your back end as well, or again, like Python Flask or like something to run an API.
So you mentioned internships. So you've had different internship experiences over the past few years. So could you just maybe go into each of those and how were the experiences? What were you doing? What tools and stuff were you using as well?
So for my first internship, it was at an education technology company, and I since it was like I came in with like having three of the fundamental programming courses at my school like completed. So it's like basically like the three intro to programming courses done. And those three courses were like the only uh courses for programming that I took before this position. And um they started me off with like different tasks and documentation. So they had me use this Spring REST documentation library, and it's just the tasks were like, I think the point of these documenting tasks were to get familiar with their code base. And so they had me document different APIs that they had. And so that's how they started me off. And then I also did some bug fixes, and they had agile scrum methodologies, which is every day you'll do like stand-ups, and everyone within my team will go around and give like an update on like what they're working on and like today and what they will be working on tomorrow, and then kind of get any help from like other team members if we're stuck. So that was the first position. And then the second internship that I had was in my in last fall, which was at a place that was a fit tech company, and they had a mobile application, and there I was working on rewriting their like web experience from it, and I kind of like spearheaded a project to uh, in React which would replace their old web experience for users, and that involved like working with a UI designer and implementing different features as well. And then for my most recent internship, I worked at a place that worked that involves like a cloud platform, and there I created a user interface to visualize different projects within their platform.
Those sound so cool. And they sound super impactful too. Like as it seems like as an intern you were able to work on projects that were kind of affecting a lot of different people.
I think like the responsibilities kind of came more in the latter two positions that I held. I think the first one was just good for like getting my foot in the door kind of, and um like getting a feel for how like software is built in the industry and kind of how like the workplace works and how to interact with coworkers, and like I think those are important experiences to have like as a young professional, I think.
Would you say you were mostly coding, or was it a lot of talking with people, or like what were you doing?
I think it's like different for each workplace. Like the first place I think was a much larger company, and so they had like a location in California, a location in New York, and one in Boston. And like specifically the location in Boston, I think it already had like well over 500 employees, I would say. And um there I think we had a lot of with their agile scrum, they were more strict about meetings. Like they would have like every team meets every day for us like a daily check-in meeting, and for my team it was, I think it was like 9:30 every morning. And so this position was on site, and we would show up for those 9:30 stand-ups, and we'd have lots of different meetings, like depending on like what you'd meet with different people for like the different projects that you were working on. And I think it was more structured in that way. But that was actually my only internship that was on site. The other two were completely remote, but I would say that the internship with the cloud platform company, they were less stringent about like specific meeting times, but we'd still meet regularly. And then for the fit tech company, I would say we didn't have daily meetings, but I think it just depends on the company. It depends on like how the company is organized and how they like are implementing, how they are making sure that like work is being done.
Based on these 3 internships, and like what you've learned through them, what what advice would you give to people who are going into an internship?
I think like it any experience in the field would is helpful experience. Like even if like you start out with documentation tasks, I think it's just important to kind of get started and to try to take as much out of the experience as you can. Um, and I think there's opportunity to learn no matter what you're doing on the job and take advantage of uh, the workplace and like the people there and take advantage of making connections and um, trying to find opportunities to learn through any of the tasks or any of your assignments.
I totally agree. There's always something to learn from every experience and every company, whether it's like working on a project or just getting familiar with the tools that they're using or meeting people. I feel like that's a huge underrated one, just connections and networking in general.
And I think another thing is it's also important to get feedback from like your mentors. I think I've learned from each of the positions that I've held. From the first one, I think from the first position that I had with the ed tech company, I learned that I think like as an intern, I was kind of nervous about like making sure that everything was done right, and I would kind of would like check in with the mentor. Like I'll like run to the mentor as soon as I had a problem, which is good like to communicate any troubles that you run into. But I think uh like be like going to the mentor right away all the time is not the best. Like I think you can work on a problem independently for a while before you like ask for help. But then I think you kind of have to strike a balance between like figure out like when would be appropriate. Like you want to have enough time to work on a problem on your own and to try to independently solve it. And balance that with like not reaching out at all.
So based on like all of your experiences and stuff, you've had different you've had a lot of exposure and experiences with web development. So based on that, like what's your favorite part about web development and what would you say is the hardest part about it?
I think my favorite part is like um how it's just like working with React, and like I think React is a fun framework to work with, and how like you can kind of just like see the changes that you're making along the way with and it's easy to get started with an app like their with Create React app, and it will automatically create an application that you can work with and you can kind of get started right away, and I think that's pretty easy and fun. But I think one of the hardest parts is like there's like a lot more to it and there's always so much to learn, and I think it's difficult, but you can find resources online to learn more about it.
What resources do you recommend to learn more about it?
I've actually learned a lot from videos online and also like different blog posts that companies will have out. Like I know that there was like there are different tools that I'll try to pick up. Like recently I worked on a personal project where I built an API with Express.js. And so there I reference like all different types of blog posts to in order to do what I wanted to do. Like a blog post might have like a specific tutorial on how to build an API for like a RESTful API for um like to get in, to add users and to edit users or something like that. And then like I would adjust it to like what I was picturing for my project. Like for the project I wanted to have it my API speak to a database in the back end. So then I figured out like it's just like searching out determining what tools you need and then finding different posts on blog posts about each of the tools and then kind of putting it all together to make up like an application really your own.
In terms of personal projects, so I feel like a lot of people struggle with getting started on a personal project or like what to do for the personal project. How did you get started with personal projects, and do you have any advice on how to go about doing one?
I think like so if you really don't know where to start, it's nice to walk like to go through tutorials where they'll show like really basic tutorials, like for example, like tic-tac-toe or like different games like Minesweeper or just like popular games that people know of, and you can find tutorials on those like basic applications. And once you walk yourself through those tutorials, it kind of like it might empower you to just to do a more like original application. And I think for like once you know how the basics and how to get like an app running and deployed and such, then you can kind of like brainstorm different ideas that you have. I kind of like look to like I've done personal projects on so the API personal project was like kind of like a database for like different social date ideas. And I kind of like looked I was in like I just know that like RESTful APIs can speak to a database, and so I thought about like different things that are relevant to my life or like different things that I would find useful. And so once you have some like a list of ideas of like basically like tools that you want to exist but that don't, then you could kind of like think about like the model and like what data structures are necessary to represent different parts of the application, and then like you can start developing your project. And I think like one of the first projects you could possibly do is like maybe a personal website. And it could be helpful to have to work with something like a wireframe. And there's this cool tool called Figma where you can lay out different shapes and different texts, and you can lay out like the user interface that you want before you even start, so that like once you get started, like things like color or font or like where things are on the page won't get in the way of your actual development.
You've been studying computer science, a technical major, and you've worked at like different technical roles, technical internships, tech companies. So, what has your experience been like as a woman in tech?
I think like most of the people that I've met along the way have been pretty supportive, and I don't think I've ever felt that like I've ever felt like other than, if that makes sense. Like different communities I'm involved with have been pretty supportive, like girls who code or tech girls. I but I didn't have those like I didn't really have a mentor like before coming to college, and I think I kind of just rely on friends as like or peers from club student organizations as like um to support me and like the like what I'm learning and what I'm doing. I think I think it's just important to try to connect with other people and try to learn from people that are um in like your mentors or like other peers, I would say.
I feel like mentorship is a huge part of like getting into the field, learning more about the field, staying in the field.
Yeah. I would say that like I know like my college is trying to do like trying to even out like I know they're trying to even things out like 50% male and 50% female, like in terms of like the student body within the College of Computer Science. And like that's like something they're doing on an administrative level, but I don't think I've ever felt any sort of discrimination or anything like that at my school. And they've done a really good job at like with through the different student organizations that you can get involved with. But I think like um what I would like to do is to like serve as a mentor like through different organizations, because I don't think that there was like thinking back to like growing up and stuff, I don't think that there were any like opportunities like where I could have known about programming sooner. Like I just didn't have those people around me, if that makes sense.
I guess like getting into those organizations, like what like have you done as part of those organizations, and like how has the overall experience been?
For Girls Who Code, I started around a year ago. So every other Saturday, we would work with this local chapter at this library in Boston, where like there's like a classroom set up in the library with like computers at the library lends to us, and um, different. So girls from like middle school will come in and we'll walk through like different workshops together, and it could be like a Python workshop or something in Scratch. and or like building like a music player application with like Python, or like even for the younger students we'll do like type to learn.
Like, do you think that with the shift to online learning and the pandemic, do you think like how do you think it's affected just kind of like the teaching and like these different like workshops and programs and stuff? Like, how do you think it's affected it? And do you think it's like a positive change or a negative change?
I think that there are some positives and negatives. Like one, like for example, the when we were going to this library every other Saturday in person, sometimes people will just like parents will just be taking their kids to the library on a Saturday morning and just like randomly pop into the classroom and think like, oh, like what's going on here? Like, can we join? And then so in that case, it's like it'd be easier if it was in person for people to stumble into some like workshop without knowing about it ahead of time. But I think online, I think you really have to look for these opportunities. And um but like since it is online, it kind of opens up like whatever a chapter might be offering to like other people across the country. Like Tech Girls, it's a group in Philadelphia that's based in like in a state that I don't live in, and I wouldn't have heard about it, like I wouldn't have found it if they didn't take things online. And so the teaching assistant position there is like a remote TA position, and like what they do is like have different TAs in breakout rooms and work with like smaller groups of people. So I think, and like another thing with um taking things online is like accessibility. And I think like sometimes like at the library the computers were like loaned from the library itself, and like sometimes I don't think like everyone has connection to the like the luxury of being able to be connected to the internet or to have like a computer, I think.
It's something I've I guess thought about too, just like how has online learning like impacted these things, and like I guess after the pandemic, like is it gonna influence like women in tech or not? But yeah, I think definitely positive is like more accessibility, like just being able to, potentially attend a program that's like on the other side of the country when before like you would have to be there in person
Yeah,
for it.
I think like one-on-one help might be more difficult to get in like a Zoom like
Mm-hmm.
event. Like I've also like been a teaching assistant for like my school through um like Microsoft Teams. And I think it's like a different experience from like being a TA in person. And I think it's harder to like pull one person aside because I don't never like experience like a breakout room with like just like two people like one on one.
That's true. And also, yeah, I guess like debugging things too. And if people have
Yeah.
individual questions, like usually a teacher, TA could like go up to the, student's laptop and like point things out
Yeah.
and such. So I think that's probably like extremely different over Zoom.
And then I also think about like there's like one course that I took which was like embedded, so it involved like robotic arms and like something called a Z board, which is similar to an Arduino or something like that. And I'm just like wondering like how that course or courses like that, which involve some level of hardware, like how that like configures into all of this, like the pandemic and like remote learning.
Yeah, I'm hoping that all of these changes don't like negatively affect people, especially like women in tech and other minorities. I think it's still really nice that like you're able to host workshops in some capacity and like teach these concepts as well. And it's been interesting to see like how things have shifted from like in person to online. Like I've heard of hackathons and designathons um, that used to obviously be in person and now they're happening online, and there's still that sense of community and building things and innovation. I mean, obviously it's like different from an in-person thing, but it's nice to see that these things are still happening in some way.
And then it's also like I think some opportunities like I think there are like new opportunities through the pandemic. Like for example, Tech Girls was through the pandemic, and there's also like different groups from like LinkedIn. They'll like have some. I know like through over the summer, I got connected with like two different groups that had like Slack channels, which one was called like Practical Connections, where like different people in the industry like volunteered to get paired with someone else on the Slack channel. So like the like older professionals and like people who are in college would get paired, and then like someone named Manish and I were like exchanging emails about like he like looked at my resume and like gave different advice on like web developing in the industry and like how I could improve my resume and like different technologies that I could learn about on my own. And so I thought that was really helpful, and that's like something that I don't think I would have found like without like things being taken online, and like it was, I think, a unique opportunity. And then another one was also like a group of people of students who were involved in like open source projects. And I think like I hope like I think that's like something that we might take away from the pandemic. It's kind of like reduces like the borders between like colleges, if that makes sense, and it kind of like allowed me to meet people from other colleges as well.
So, but like related to Girls Who Code and Tech Girls, like what's your favorite part about being in those?
I think my favorite part is just being able to make an impact and being able to get involved in like a community from outside of like school. And I think what I like about it is that even after I graduate, I can still like continue to stay involved. And it's there are like some clubs, undergraduate clubs, that like are for undergraduates only, like graduate students can't get involved, or like people from outside like who are not enrolled as students like can't be involved in these organizations. And I think like having access to these communities is a great thing because I could still like stay involved even like after I graduate.
So, looking at the future, like what are some of your goals for the rest of school, career, life in general?
For school, I definitely want to graduate. So I only have like two like level courses left, and like I think they're like the toughest courses in like the whole entire curriculum. Like one is called software development and the other one is called networks. So again, like for the networks course, I'm excited to learn about like low level programming. But professionally, I think I didn't really know where I was starting, like what I was going to be focusing on, like when I was starting out at my first internship. But then I kind of got really heavily involved in front end development. Like even at my most recent internship, it was a role on like an infrastructure team. But then they knew that I had background in like React and building user interfaces. So then they kind of created a project for me to work on a user interface. And I thought that I would have like a chance to learn about like more about infrastructure and backend and like kind of like the different tools that go into like keeping a system up and like just like building APIs and stuff on the back end. But I think I want to work on learning about back end tools, like maybe like a testing framework or like something like Selenium, or just like making APIs and like interacting with databases on the back end. And then like kind of like work on those through personal projects, and then maybe like professionally maybe try to branch out of like front end web development. I think it'd be like a good learning opportunity.
So, based on everything you've learned so far, what advice would you give to people who are interested in tech?
Just like try to get started, even if it's through something simple like simple projects, or just getting your foot in the door is um what will like help you to grow as a developer, I think.
Yeah, just like trying things out, getting your foot in the door, being open to like learning new things. Like basically everything you've been talking about this whole conversation, I think is really good advice. I've always thought that there's a place for everyone in tech. Like if you really want to do something.
Yeah, I would say like so there's like so much more than just like web development. There's like user interface design, like there's like user experience and like data science, just and there's even more, there's even like areas that I'm not even that familiar with, like machine learning or like artificial intelligence. There's like different areas that you can concentrate on, that like it I just like the possibilities are endless. Yeah, every company, like every industry, like no matter what it is, like they have like a website, and like there's like unlimited ways like that computer science or can connect with other disciplines, I would say.
Well, thank you so much, Carmen, for all of your insights and advice. And I loved talking with you today on this Zoom call and getting to hear about all the amazing things you've done. And I can't wait to see everything you do in the future. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this Zoom call.
Thank you for having me. I think what you're doing here is great. Like I've been watching some of your videos, and it's like helpful to learn from other people's experiences as well. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to connect with others and to learn from them.
For everyone watching, make sure to connect with Carmen. I'll link her Instagram and GitHub links in the description below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.